On this super unboxing live, we're going to take a look at the Moondrop Blessing 2. So this is an IEM from the company Moondrop. They've brought us such hits as the Moondrop Crescent, there's the Moondrop Canas Pro, the KXXS, and then most recently the IEM that kind of everyone's talking about is the Moondrop Starfield. Well, here we've got the Blessing 2, and it's different than those other IEMs for a couple of reasons. One, those other IEMs are single dynamic drivers. This is a hybrid, so we've got that dynamic driver, but we've also got 4 balanced armature drivers. More drivers doesn't necessarily mean better, but at the price range that these things are coming at, I kind of hope that they're better. So that's the other big difference between these and the other IEMs that I mentioned, is that Moondrop typically, most of their IEMs that they're known for are priced under $200. Well, here with the Blessing 2, it's $320. So not exactly cheap. In fact, it might be one of my most expensive IEMs. So I got kind of high hopes for it. So, I mean, that said, I actually haven't listened to this thing at all yet. Let's go ahead and open it up here on my table in live real time. And while I'm opening it up, go ahead and hit the like button if you like the idea of this video, and start asking questions in the chat, because after I'm done with the unboxing, I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at the questions and do sort of a live Q&A with you guys. And yeah, again, if you like this idea, please hit that like button and stick around. So yeah, maybe not my best spin, but that's what you get live. You get the first spin. Usually I go a couple of attempts at once, but here we go. So we got the Moondrop Blessing sitting here in a box, and I have cut off the cellophane because it doesn't look good on camera, but otherwise I haven't touched this box. Looking around the back, we got a little bit of that information that we talked about. 1 dynamic driver, 4 balanced armatures. This is a hybrid IEM. And then down here, we've got some specs that frankly, I don't know. Whenever I see specs like this, I don't really think too much about it, right? So it's got a frequency range of, I believe, 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Does that mean anything to anybody? Doesn't mean much to me. Maybe one thing that does stand out here, though, is the impedance. That's 22 ohm impedance, but they don't actually, at least I don't see anything about, I don't see anything necessarily about the sensitivity, unless this 117 dBs is the sensitivity, in which case this should be a very sensitive IEM. Otherwise, look, there's not much information on this box. We've got some weeb stuff, and I'm not the biggest weeb stuff person, but I am playing Grand Blue Fantasy Versus lately, so maybe I'm a little bit more weeb than I think. Let's go ahead and open it up. Sometimes this is easy, sometimes it's not. This time it's ish. All right, so we've got a nice little carrying pouch, which has probably got some accessories in it. We've got a box, which has probably got some accessories in it, and oh, we've got some paperwork. Let's see, introduction of the Blessing 2. Got some instructions on how to wear them. If you don't know how to wear IEMs yet, well, hopefully you speak and can read Chinese. Unfortunately, I can't. We've got QR codes, which everyone loves QR codes, so go ahead and have at that, you QR code enthusiasts. And then here we've got some sort of authentication or quality control guarantee, which is a nice little touch. And which of these am I going to open up first? I kind of want to save the IEMs for last, and I'm going to guess they're in there. So let's go with the box. In this box, let's see what we've got. All right, so we've got cable here, and we've got, let's see what's in this little baggie. Looks like some connectors and some adapters, perhaps. All right, so we've got an airline adapter, which is kind of an interesting inclusion. I guess they imagine people that are spending $320 for earphones are likely to be the sorts of folks that are jet setting around the world. Maybe not this time of the year, this time of history, but in the future, there will be people jet setting around the world again. And then here we've got our bag of tips, and you can see we've got quite a few different sizes. Wow, this is definitely more tips than you typically expect. Let's see, probably not going to get these matched up quite exactly right, but that seems to be like kind of three of roughly the same size, three sets of roughly the same size. And then here we've got, let's see, those are some mediums here, those are some smalls, and then these, we've got some extra smalls. Interesting that it came with, or it looks like it appears to have come with, some overlap. All right, well, there's your tip selection. Let's take a look at the cable. And let's see, my experience with past Moondrop cables is that they're not my favorite cables, but they're not the worst cables. And this one, on first impression, seems to be kind of in the middle. This is definitely nicer than the cable that came with the Starfield. The Starfield cable is a little bit on the wiry side. Canas Pro cable is a little bit nicer. And then this, I mean, I think this cable looks pretty freaking handsome. But the one complaint that I do have with some of these modern Moondrop cables is this Y-split thing. It's just a little bit chunky. I mean, I think it looks kind of cool, I suppose. But when you're, well, when I'm winding up IEM cables, that kind of thing gets in the way. We do have preformed ear hooks, naturally, and they are a 2-pin cable, which is very typical of Moondrop IEMs. And then down here, we've got your 3.5 millimeter connector, and it is on an L, which not my favorite, but I'm not going to complain too much about that. That is very common. I'll quickly wind this thing up, get it out of the way, and then take a look at what's inside this pretty attractive little storage case. In fact, this has got to be, I mean, I mentioned this is probably the most expensive IEM that I've got, so maybe it makes sense, but this has got to be the nicest looking carrying case I've got as well. Got a little zipper in. Definitely not leather, definitely some sort of synthetic material, which I think I'm okay with. Open it up, oh, there we've got the IEM sitting in foam. Interesting, that's all that's in there. I kind of expected there might be more. Not that I care, but there you go. Let's go ahead and put the case there, take a look at the IEMs. All right, so first impression is that these are lighter than I expected them to be. All right, seeing pictures of them, they appear to be a solid acrylic, and they are. They are a solid acrylic, right? So which the difference between this and some other IEMs of a similar shape and build is that the plastic or the epoxy or whatever material that they use is solid rather than a hollow shell. And I personally like this quite a bit. I think it gives these things a really cool look that is, you know, kind of like looking through glass. It's almost jewelry-like. And that's definitely one of the reasons why I like this sort of thing. I am superficial in that sense. But yeah, you can see you got the dynamic driver sitting there. You've got your balanced armature array sitting here, and they are all terminating into what looks like 3 different ports on that nozzle. And I'll call out that that nozzle looks a little bit on the chunky side. And interestingly, this is actually, 2 things are interesting. One, it didn't come with the tips pre-installed. As well, there doesn't seem to be anything on here to hold the tips in place. So the tip goes on, and I'll say that it's actually on there better than I would have expected, considering the fact that there's no like lip or anything on that nozzle. But I do think that is a pretty nice look. So I've got, you know, one IEM, what is this? The right side, you've got the Blessing 2 logo, and then over here on the right side, it's plain. From what I can tell on the retail site, so the retailer Shenzhen Audio actually sent these IEMs to me, and what I can tell from based on their website is you can actually pick what to have engraved on the left side IEM if you choose. There's basically just versions of this weeb anime theme that if that's your thing, you can have that engraved on the IEM, and if it's not your thing, it's not really my thing. Apparently you don't have to. Let's see if I can do a little close-up, because I gotta be honest, you're probably not totally satisfied looking at these things from that distance. So how are we looking here? All right, so there's our close-up of the Moondrop Blessing 2. And you can see that glassy character to the IEM is pretty freaking satisfying in my opinion. the cable, worth seeing the cable up close. There's the cable. Decent looking cable, but yeah, I don't know. That's about, you know, as much as we're gonna tell about the Moondrop Blessing without me actually spending some time listening to this thing. So, I mean, I'll try and get a few little test listens in here while I'm talking with you guys, but I think we're just gonna go ahead and go back to the Q&A section. So thanks for watching this. And again, if you liked the idea of me doing these things live like this, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you've got any questions for me right now, leave them in the chat. And if you have any questions for me later, you can leave them in the comments because I'm gonna look at those too. All right, so let me go ahead and get this thing situated. And while I'm doing that, again, feel free to start prepping some comments and some questions if you've got them for me, or I don't know, really anything you want to say to me. If you want to tell me that I look silly, I'm okay with that too. Yeah, it's really interesting that the nozzles on here don't have any sort of lip to hold the tips onto, but it doesn't actually appear to be an issue because the tips seem to stay on there pretty well. Better than some other IMs I've tried that do have those sorts of measures. But yeah, let me go ahead and look through some of those comments real quick. Just make sure I'm not missing anything. Let's see, we got Intuit Reviews watching. Thanks for watching. Very, very nice. Very, very no ice. I appreciate that. Also interesting is that on this cable there is no Y split, or there's no chin cinch, which is interesting. Kind of a chin cinch guy myself. I didn't used to be, but now I am. Andrew is pointing out that having no lip on the nozzle is pretty common for these sort of resin builds, and maybe that is. Maybe it is, especially with, I know, with like actual custom IEMs, right, where it's molded for your ear. There's no lip on it because, well, you're not really expected to wear a tip on it anyway, but so it does kind of give it that look. I'm kind of curious that I've tried quite a few other IEMs, and maybe not a ton like this, but I have tried quite a few. I can't actually remember seeing anything that was like this. Now we do the fun game of looking at this cable at various different angles to see if I can decipher which one is the right side versus the left side. I think I got this right. Casaro pointed out they also prefer having the IEMs be solid versus hollow. Let's see, what did they say? It's totally my thing. It's my thing as well. That's actually one of the reasons I like the Magaosi K5 so much. I mean, that's a really superficial reason for me to like it so much, but it's definitely one of the reasons I like it so much, is it's just a beautiful thing to behold. But now we've got, finally, I got the Blessing fully kitted up. We've got the tips on it that I think will be roughly the size I need, although we'll find out. And I've got the cable on it, and you can kind of see that this cable, the IMs, you know, even though they are relatively light, they are still overpowering the flex of that cable, but not too bad. Just sitting here in my ears, what do you think? Good luck. See, let's go first into the ears. And yeah, I'm gonna say up front, one thing that I was kind of concerned about was the fit of these things in my ears, just because in pictures they look a little bit on the chunky side, and then when I watched Bad Guy's review, he seemed to find that the nozzles were actually a little bit too wide for his ears, which I've had that experience with some other IMs before, and maybe it's just because I've been listening to Etymotics lately. On initial impression, I'm actually pretty happy with this fit. In fact, like, it fills out my ear cavity pretty well. I think isolation's pretty strong. I can't hear myself talking at all, so if I'm talking too loud or too quiet, I apologize. But yeah, that's looking pretty good. Anna Ruth was saying that they look heavy and asking, do they feel heavy in my ear? And the answer is no. Actually, I think that these things fit You know, like I was saying when I was unboxing them, they actually feel a little bit lighter than I expected. And I would say that in practice, even though they are dangling, they are kind of overpowering the hooks, and this kind of looks like they're a little bit heavier than you might want. In my ears, they're not actually any heavier than I want, and I think that just in practicality, like if I put these things on a scale, I would guess that they would, on my scale, probably be around like the 13 to 15 grams, which compares to something like the, let's see, I've got like the JVC FD1X, and those are around 22 grams. So, I mean, that's just an estimate. Like I'm not a human scale. That's just kind of where I think these things are at. Let's see what other questions we got. What's the first song you're going to listen to with the Blessing 2? So VOXIS, sorry if I'm supposed to pronounce that, Vozis or something like that, is asking what's the first song I'm going to listen to. And I'm going to have to go with my first song that I always listen to, which is a De La Soul track that I talked about on my last live stream. The track is called Copacabana, and it didn't used to be on YouTube, but in my last live stream I mentioned that it wasn't on YouTube, and someone actually found it. So if you actually go to my channel, go to the playlist section, I've got a playlist of tracks that I like to use for reference, and that De La Soul track, just because it's a song I've listened to so much, as soon as I start listening to that song with any new IEM, any new piece of audio equipment, the tonality will stand out to me, right? If there's anything weird about the tonality, it's gonna stand out. And so that's why it's one of my first tracks that I almost always go to. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and give it just a quick sample right now. And I wanna be careful because I don't want to give any strong impressions about the audio based on like 2-minute listening impressions that I'm gonna get here. I'm not the sort of person that can really listen to an IEM in 5 minutes and have a very good sense of it. I usually have to spend quite a bit of time, and realistically, I'm probably going to spend a week, maybe 2 weeks listening to this IEM before I feel like I'm ready to give it a review. But I can't help listening to this song real quick, so let me go ahead and check it out. All right, that's it. That's all I can do for now. Good first impressions, but I don't want to say too much more about that. The one thing, what can I say about it initially that won't be too much reviewing is that sound signature wise, it's not like an especially thick sounding IEM. The bass didn't actually seem to be especially elevated, although again, take all these impressions with a grain of salt because that was about 30 seconds of listening. Yeah, so it's not an especially bassy IEM, and because of that, like it's not mid-bassy, there's doesn't appear to be any bloat into the lower mid-range, which for me is very important. That's one of the reasons that I don't really like bassy IEMs so much, is that I don't really like it when the bass overwhelms the mid-range, and initial impressions are that the Blessing 2 does not do that, so that's good. Also, initial impression that I can give is that it doesn't appear to be especially sensitive, despite the fact that on the spec sheet it was showing that 117 dB spec. Yeah, so I'm not getting any hiss on my Walkman, which will tend to hiss with especially sensitive IEMs. And as well, like when I was trying to get the volume up, I was pushing it up a little bit higher than I do, well, quite a bit higher than I do on things like my Maga OCK5, which is an especially sensitive IEM. So I would say that sensitivity here is relatively middle of the road, at least based on initial impressions. Let's see if we got any other questions. H. Ketter is asking, hi, sorry about sound. I'm not going to be able to say too much more about the sound than what I just talked about. Message retracted. Interesting. I don't even know what that means. How much the sound is clear. So ask again, the the general impression that I get with the sound signature on here is that it is more of a clarity focused sound rather than a warm, sort of relaxed sound, although the treble didn't appear to be especially forward. Like I didn't detect any sharpness or sibilance based on like 30 seconds of listening. So again, take that with a grain of salt. But overall, I would say that this leans more toward sort of that upper mid-rangey end and clarity than it does on the lower end with bass. Rafi Rabani's asking, can I do a review of the Zero Audio Zero Bass? Interesting. I'm not actually familiar with that one. I've tried the Zero Audio Carbo Tenore, which is like I think like a $30 or $40 IEM. That was actually one of the first IEMs I heard a number of years ago. It's been a while, so, well, I guess it was about 2 years ago, so take this with a grain of salt, but that was actually a pretty nice little sounding IEM, especially for the price and just the nice simple build of it. I like that. Uzum Christian is asking, what are currently my top 5 IEMs in any budget? And that's a hard question to answer. I would say that the ones that I use the most, right? I think this is maybe a good way to answer this question, right? It's like, I'm not gonna say that these are necessarily the best sounding or that these are necessarily the ones that are the best price to performance. I'm just gonna say the ones that I personally use the most out of my collection. Number 1 is gonna be the Maga OCK5. Number 2 is probably still the Shozi Cross Neo CP. After that, probably the Etymotic ER2 XR. What else have I been using a lot lately? The JVC FD X1 I still go to because I love that one. And then otherwise, let's see, actually, I've got this little rack over here of all my different IEMs, and the ones that I use the most, I've got separated. So I just gave you, I think, 4. I'm gonna give you my number 5, which lately it's actually been the Meizu Live, which partly I've been using that one a lot lately because for a while I loaned it to a friend and I didn't have it for a few months, and now I've got it again, so it's fun to listen to. But it's also just like, the Meizu Live is one of those IEMs that's very easy listening. Like the treble's quite light, but it's not light on detail, which is one of the reasons that I like it. Rafi says, likes my videos. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sanan's asking, have I tried the AudioQuest Dragonfly Cobalt? And the answer is no. I haven't actually tried a lot of those little simple USB DAC amps. I actually don't totally get the purpose of the ones that have like a USB-A port. The ones that have USB-C, those make sense to me, right? There's a lot of phones that don't have headphone jacks on them anymore, so you gotta have a headphone jack when the USB-C DAC amp is a good solution for that. Things like the AudioQuest Dragonfly Cobalt and things like that. I'm not saying that there's not a good purpose for them. I'm just saying that for my life, I don't really understand it. So I'm probably the wrong person to give a good impression of that. Domego's asking, this is a general question, I know. You have reviewed items that aren't IEMs, like fountain pens. Do you have any plans in the future for reviewing something outside of audio? Just curious. Short answer is yes, we'll surely be reviewing things outside of audio, but I don't currently have anything planned. Are there any things I've been thinking about? Like, I did the Super 73 e-bike recently, and that was a lot of fun. I'm actually kind of interested in these like little personal electronic battery powered transports. So things like the e-bike or the Super 73, things like the One Wheel. I think the One Wheel looks really cool, and they just came out with the new One Wheel Pint, which is under $1,000, smaller than the original One Wheel, and that thing looks really cool. My only hesitation with that is I kind of feel like in my life I actually don't have a good use for it. I wish I lived in like a city and getting around, city blocks and stuff like that. The One Wheel seems like a really good option. Where I live is a little bit outside the city, so the applications are not quite as obvious. Maybe if it had a little bit better range. I think the range is like 6 to 9 miles. And if the range was like 20 miles, then I would start thinking about it as something I might seriously use to get around town. Sarah is asking, which do I prefer, the Tin T4 or the Moondrop Starfield? And what are the differences between the two? So the Tin T4 and the Starfield. Between those two, if I had to choose one of them, I would probably choose the Tin T4. I think that tonally, I like the T4 better. It leans more toward upper mid-range and treble, whereas the Starfield leans more toward more relaxed treble. Like it's a slightly dark IEM. I wouldn't say it's actually dark, but it's on the slightly dark side. And then as well, it's a little bit bassier. So I think that between the two, just overall mid-range presentation, I think comes through better with the Tin T4. And the Starfield, it's hard for me to pick on the Starfield. Like when I listen to that, there's like nothing that it really does bad, but it's just one of those IEMs that I don't go back too often. Like it doesn't have a hook for me, and there's something about the mid-range that just feels a little bit lacking. Let's see, looking at some other questions. So Uzum followed up saying, thanks for the answer. Kind of find myself shifting towards engaging IEMs with good vocals and decent soundstage. What would my suggestion be for that? Sorry to keep sounding like a broken record, but I would say that the Maga-Osi K5 is probably my favorite that fits that description. The K5, look, if you haven't considered that IEM, I know that's an IEM that doesn't have like a ton of hype behind it. Go back and watch my review, because everything that I said about that IEM, I still believe. It's just the presentation of vocals and mid-range on the K5 is really, really satisfying for me. There's plenty of treble intrigue, maybe a little bit too much if you're really sensitive to treble, but for me, it never really gets to the point that it's harsh. And the sense of imaging, soundstage, whatever you want to call it, I think actually comes across in that IEM better than most, for sure. Rafi's asking, have I ever tried the TFZ My Love edition? I have not. The only TFZs that I have tried are, let's see, I've got the T2 Galaxy as well as the TFZ number 3. Both of those TFZs I would characterize as sort of V-shaped IEMs with big emphasis in the sub bass and, you know, slightly odd tonality in the upper mid-range. So yeah, they also both have an issue with driver flex, and I've had other people say that that's just a thing with TFZs. And I'd be lying if I said that that didn't have some negative impact on my interest in TFZs in the future. I mean, I'm not going to hold it against every TFZ, but me going out of my way to try a TFZ, I kind of have those expectations that it'll be V-shaped, a lot of sub bass, and good chance of driver flex. So I haven't been that interested in trying other TFZs. Sorry, I'm really bad with these names. But Sabrangshu is asking, what is my phone? And I'm actually still back on my iPhone XR. I freaking hate how heavy and big this phone is, but I keep going back to it. You know, I did try going to, actually this is a Sony Xperia 10 for a while. I absolutely love the form factor in this thing. I think the software is actually really good too. It's just Sony does a really nice, very light skin on Android that I very much appreciate, but unfortunately, the processor in this thing it's not good enough for my experiences. And then when I got tired of dealing with that processor and went back to my iPhone, the difference in performance and smoothness and just how easy it is to get around in iOS was too hard to resist. So I'm back on the iPhone. Oh, my light died. I thought it would die. All right, we're just about running out of questions, so I'll probably be wrapping it up pretty soon. But let me look one more. I got another message from Demigo. Nice to talk to you. It's been a few days using the ER2XR. Very good IM. I still quite like it. Like I said in the review, it's very relaxed and not forced. It's very natural sounding, which I totally agree with, so thanks for suggesting those. Yeah, the ER2XR, that's still one I like. I think that there's actually a little bit more, so we talk about that price range, around $110, $120. You've got the ER2XR, you've got the Tin Hi-Fi T4, and you've got the Moondrop Starfield. And I think that you could probably put like Moondrop Starfield on one end, Tin T2 on one end, and the ER2 kind of in the middle in terms of tonality and like, you know, kind of increasing emphasis in bass and decreasing emphasis in treble. Although the ER2 is kind of like the Starfield. It's a little bit on the dark side, but I don't think that the bass quite clouds up. I just don't think that the mid-range is quite as V-shaped as it is on the Starfield, and because of that, I end up liking the ER2 quite a bit more than the Starfield. Sanan's asking, why do I keep rocking iPhone when I can have an LG or a G series phone with a quad DAC? That's a very good question. So, one, I actually don't put a ton of stock into the quad DAC marketing. Not that like I think that they're going to sound bad. Like I think the LG phones would probably sound better than your average phone, but I do think that the quad DAC marketing is a little bit, I don't know. I think people just kind of repeat it because they heard it without really I haven't seen any like head-to-head comparison saying, oh yeah, this one actually does clearly sound better. I would guess that those phones can get headphones louder than most other headphones because they've got multiple DACs and amps ostensibly powering the output on it, but mostly I'm listening to IM, so power is not usually a consideration for me. Also, I'll just say, like at this point, I've kind of I've resigned myself to using dongles. What do we got? We got the Meizu dongle here, which is a very nice sounding dongle. I've also got the Apple dongle, a very nice sounding dongle. So I don't hate dongle life. So that's one reason. And then the other reason that I haven't gone to an LG phone is just they make big phones with LG's software. Then I'm pretty particular about the aesthetics of my phone. So that's, you know, one of the reasons why I liked the Xperia 10 is I think that aesthetically, I'm gonna say something crazy right now. I think this is the best looking Android phone on the market. It's a $250 phone. It's the best looking phone. I think it feels pretty nice too. The LG phones, man, you know, one thing that drives me nuts is asymmetrical bezels, where having, you know, the side bezels be different from the top and bottom. I'm cool with that. But having the top and the bottom be different from each other drives me nuts, unless like the Xperia, the bottom bezel is the same as the left and the right. And that sounds insane, I know, but that's the sort of thing that drives me nuts. And so that's one of the reasons I haven't gotten an LG phone. Maybe not the answer you were looking for, but that's honestly the truth of it. Let's see what other questions we got. Demigo's asking, what do I do for a living? I know that you've said answering emails before, haha, but in reality, very interesting. So yeah, for a living, I don't do YouTube, I don't do audio reviews for a living. I kind of work in, I guess you could say, web development. Work in San Francisco, official, like job title is a product manager, work in product and design. Yeah, I mean, that's the gist of it. I'm in San Francisco and work at a company you might have heard of, but I don't usually like to talk about on this channel. So there you go. Did get a super chat. Wow, 10 bucks from Hi-Fi Trucker. Get some tacos. I appreciate that. I'm actually curious, Hi-Fi Trucker, what are your favorite tacos? Because I am a taco fan. Although if I'm honest, I might prefer a Mission Burrito to a taco, but definitely not going to turn down a taco. And if I'm at a taqueria, I would say that my meat of choice is almost always carnitas. Carne asada is kind of like the go-to for most people, but for me, I'm a carnitas guy. Oh, fried crispy pork, so good. Let's see, Rafi with another question. Can you do more in-depth looks on the product when you review a product? It's kind of nitpick, but I want to see some nice close-ups on that product. Thank you. Yeah, so maybe one thing that I can do, Rafi, I'm actually looking to do more of my content in live streams like this. So, you know, let's see if I can do this smoothly. I haven't lost you guys. You're still there. Hopefully I don't, ooh, I might have just lost it. Hold on, folks. So what I want to do is do more of my production via live stream. And what that will allow me to do is more easily switch between overhead cam and, let's see, be able to switch between overhead cam and talking cam, so that when you guys have questions about specific things, I can show you, oh, here's a close-up of the IM, here's the answer to your question. That's sort of what I want to do. So the short answer is that yes, I can do more of that in the future, because that's one of the things that I'm hoping to do in the future. I'll say right now, the hardware that I've got is a limiting factor. It's a little bit janky, but it's working at least enough now. I've got some stuff on order that hopefully will get here in the next week or so that'll make this stuff easier. Hi-Fi Trucker, again, thank you for the donation. I really do want to know, what are your favorite tacos? I'm not kidding. Joshua is saying, nothing strong with dongles when you get the right one, because with most IMs you don't need much power like the phone. Do you like software on the Sony phone? So yeah, look, I hated the idea of dongle life for the longest time. Still kind of hate the idea of dongle life, but I'm over it in terms of it being a thing that's going to prevent me from enjoying audio on a phone. I'll probably talk about this more in a future video, but I actually hate iPhone for digital audio player purposes. And so that's one of the reasons I really do want to find an Android phone that I can love. And one of the reasons that I went to the Sony Xperia 10. And to answer your question, yeah, I actually really like the software in the Xperia 10. I mean, it's almost basic skinless Android, which is what I want. The Samsung, I have the S10e, and the hardware on that's pretty decent, even if the bezels are asymmetrical, and that does in fact drive me insane. But I could probably live with the S10e, especially given how nice it just feels in the hand. But the Samsung software, I'm just not into. The Sony software, it's basically Google Android software, and so I like this quite a bit. If this thing had a faster processor in this exact same body, this would be my main phone right now, but unfortunately, it's not. Ricardic was asking, will I try the KZ S1? I probably won't. Can I be honest? I probably won't. I'm interested to try it, but I'm not really that interested enough to put a full video production behind it. And that's kind of the limiting factor of whether or not I try something. Is this stuff right here, me doing video, this takes a lot of work to set up, and I'm not complaining about that level of work or anything, but it does mean that there are certain things that I'd be interested in trying it if it was presented in front of me. But if you're going to say that I have to do all this work in order to try it, there's certain things like the KZ S1 that I'm not going to try. And the reasons why I'm not that interested in the KZ S1, one, I had bad experience with previous KZ True Wireless. I did the T1, which was fine. It was okay, but it had some pretty janky stuff to it. And then the other thing is that those KZ IMs, like a lot of these audiophile brand True Wireless, they come in a container that is just going to be prohibitively large for me. The way that I use True Wireless, look, I want a container that's this small, and the KZ cable or the KZ container is definitely going to be larger than that, and so it's going to be legitimately something that prevents me from actually wanting to use it in day-to-day life. Demigo, thank you for the donation, $5. Wow, you didn't need to do that. Love you, bro. Keep doing what you're doing for the community. You got a great community. Yeah, you guys are great. Totally appreciate that. And just to be clear, you guys don't need to donate money to me, but it is appreciated. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Walter White is asking, have I tested the Urban Fun? And the answer is no. I'm actually kind of interested in the Urban Fun Yes, or that other, whatever that collection of letters and numbers. That's got to be the worst model number for anything I've ever seen in my life, but I'm not going to hold that against it. But yeah, I'm interested in trying that out, but given what I've seen of the graphs, I don't think it's going to be necessarily my cup of tea. It looks like a bit of a traditional V-shaped IM, although albeit it appears to be a well-done version. So the Urban Fun Yes looks promising, but again, it's one of those things where I'm interested to try it, but I'm not really interested enough to put a video production behind it. So there's a good chance I might not ever try it. I'll just wait till the next hype of the month. Hi-Fi Trucker followed up with another $5, which is ridiculous, but thank you for the clarification. Try lengua meat if you're in your tacos, my fave. So lengua, I'll be honest, I haven't tried lengua, but it is an option at basically every taqueria that I've been to. I love carnitas so much that I have a hard time saying no to carnitas. But for you, next time I'll try lengua. Follow-up question, Hi-Fi Trucker. What salsa is your preferred? Do you like a pico de gallo? Do you like just a finer red salsa, or maybe like a salsa verde? Zataboy, or Zadobi, awesome, asked why not the Xperia 1? And look, this is gonna sound insane, but this is gonna be my honest answer. The Xperia 1, the bezels are asymmetrical, and that drives me nuts. The other thing about the Xperia 1 versus the 10 is I'm pretty sure the Xperia 1 is quite a bit larger of a phone, and one of the things that I'm trying to get away from with this freaking iPhone is how big this thing is. I hate how big and heavy it is, and I really wanted something small and light, and so the Xperia 10 was a pretty good option. There's some talk now about the upcoming Xperia. So they've already announced an Xperia 1.2 Mark II, which I think is still similarly large, although the bezels might be symmetrical on that, so that's appealing, but it's a $1,000 phone. I'm getting off track here. There's also now the Xperia 10.2 Mark II, which also seems to doesn't have the same bezel arrangement, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's also still got kind of like a lower grade processor, which I'm a little afraid of now at this point. But there are now starting to become some discussions and some rumors about the Xperia 5 Mark II, which might be Sony's new small phone. And if those rumors turn out to be true and it comes with a sensibly symmetrical bezel arrangement, there's a very good chance that the Xperia 5 II will be my next phone. I'm very hopeful for it, but I don't know, we'll see. Valentine asking, have I tried any planar magnetic earphones? I'm in the market for new earphones and headphones and a portable amp, happy to spend fairly high. So I have tried and reviewed the Tin Hi-Fi P1. If you haven't seen that review, it's on the channel. Go ahead and check out the channel, look for the P1 review. And that's actually still one of my favorite IEMs as well. I went through my top 5 most used IEMs, and if I carried that out to like my top 6 or top 7, I think the P1 probably would have gotten a mention there. I still really like the way that the P1 sounds. It's got a fairly relaxed neutral sound, but zero cloudiness, nice clarity, without being fatiguing really at all, except for in the upper treble regions, where I'll be honest, my hearing tends to drop off a little bit past 17,000 hertz, 17K, and that earphone extends even beyond that. So if you've got the hearing of like a 12-year-old, maybe that'll be a problem for you, but for my hearing, I actually really quite like the P1. That's the only planar IEM that I've heard. I've heard some planar headphones. The Odyssey LCD 2 Classic is the one that stands out the most to me. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Vic Patel saying, thanks for doing what I do. Why do you prefer the Mago OC K5 over the Eco OH10? Which I think is a good question, because both of those IEMs are priced pretty similarly, just below $200. And if I were to choose between the two, it would definitely be the K5. And for me, it's mostly about tonality, which that's a very crappy answer. Yeah, I would just say that the Eco OH10 is still actually one of my favorites. Again, if I were extending my most used IEMs to like 6 or 7, the OH10 would actually come into the mix, because I do still use that one quite a bit. But just tonality wise, it's a little bit V-shaped for my taste. It's more sub-bass focused, which can be a lot of fun a lot of times. Don't get me wrong, I do love a nice sub-bass. And what I do like about the Eco OH10 is that even though it's a little bit sub-bass and vocals focused, like a traditional V-shape-ish, and the treble is somewhat relaxed, except for in the extended treble regions where it comes back a little bit, and I think it keeps it feeling a little bit more detailed and exciting than something like the Moondrop Starfield, at least for my personal tastes. But up against the Mago OC K5, I still prefer the K5 for 2 reasons. Let's just go with tonality-wise. I still prefer the more mid-range focused, more upper-end focused, and less sub-bass focused of the K5. And then the other big thing, the other big reason why I love the K5 and why it's such an easy IEM for me to use all the time is the fit is just perfect. It plugs into my ears with no effort, and it's comfortable. I can sleep in it. The Eco OH10 is also actually very comfortable, and it fits pretty well, but it never fits as securely, which just means I have to fiddle with it a little bit more often. And they're also, they're on the heavy side. They're clearly the heaviest IEM that I've got, like by a wide margin, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it contributes to the fact that I have to, adjust them and play with them in my ears a little bit every once in a while. Hi-Fi Trucker, you haven't told me about your favorite salsa yet. I'm really pretty curious, because you seem, if you're going for lengua, you're a legit taco enthusiast, and I have a feeling that your answer is going to be a high quality answer. Vic Patel says +1 for OnePlus. I have considered OnePlus phones recently, especially with like the new OnePlus 8. I appreciate that. I expect I'm going to get a pretty light skin, basically, pure Android experience with the OnePlus. Unfortunately, their phones are they're too big for me. I need a smaller phone. This iPhone XR, this is the biggest phone that I've bought for myself. All right, so I've used some other phones like the Pixel XL that I've done for review, but this is the biggest phone I've ever bought for myself, and I wish I didn't. I wish I got a smaller phone, but unfortunately, it's still my favorite phone that I've got, so I keep dailying it. Adobe asks, Sony Zx 507 Walkman. So that's the new replacement to the ZX 300. It's very similar in spirit to this Sony A105. So it's an Android version of that Walkman. And I'm interested to try it, but to be honest, I don't think that Walkman is gonna do a ton for me. I mean, I'm gonna have to kind of like make up some of this basically I have to make up some of the market positioning of a lot of products for myself, because I don't think manufacturers are very good at clarifying why a user should pick the ZX 500 versus the A100. But my general understanding is that the ZX 500 is going to have a more powerful amplifier, so it probably will be better for powering headphones, full-size headphones. Most of the time when I'm using my Walkman, I'm just using IEMs, and I don't actually need more power. I also know that the ZX 500 it's got a balanced output. It's got that 4.4 connector from Sony that I think that looks like a really cool connector, and it would be great if everything that I had that was 3.5 was instead 4.4, but it's not the case, and like I don't see myself going out of my way and converting everything to 4.4 just so that I can use them on my Sony player. So I don't know. If like the value proposition of the ZX 500 was not just power output, but that like the battery life was like 2 or 3 times better, I'd actually be pretty interested in that, because as much as I love the A105, the battery life is a big bummer. But from what I can tell, based on Sony's specs, the battery life on the 500, the ZX500 is only marginally better, and in practice, I probably would not expect much difference. Walter White asked, what is my best $50 IEM? And I'm gonna give the same recommendation that I give to pretty much everyone that joins the Discord. And if you're not part of the Discord channel, check out my Discord. It's on the Super Review channel as well. I should post a link, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. You can find it if you're really devoted. Join the Discord. The advice that I almost always give to people looking for an IEM under 50 bucks is there's still 2 choices for me. The Tin Hi-Fi T2 is still my favorite personally, under 50 bucks. But if you're the sort of person that's saying that you're looking for a lot of bass and you want a bassy IEM and you're looking at like KZs, my second option is going to be the Blonde BL03. I think the Blonde kind of renders basically all KZs obsolete. There's no reason to get a KZ in my opinion. That said, I do still prefer the Tin Hi-Fi T2 for my personal tonal preferences. It's a little bit more neutral, a little bit more upper end treble focused, less so about that bass. Whereas the Blonde, it is a bassy IEM. It's a little bit on the warm side. It's got, you know, a little bit of a mid bass bloat, but it is very, very satisfying. I'll be honest, just not typically what I go for. Zataby says that the Xperia 5 Mark II looks great. I'm actually curious, are there any like pictures or leaks of the Mark II? Because at this point, I've just seen like descriptions about what the Xperia 5 Mark II might be, and I haven't seen any pictures. Oh, Ketter, sorry, I see your clarification, asking about the Fender earphones, and yeah, I'm probably not going to check those out. Valentine asking, do I think Sony will have a new portable amp DAC soon? I honestly don't know. I don't really know much about the market or what Sony has been doing in the DAC amp market. I do have some ideas of my own for a DAC amp that I would like to see, and maybe in the future I'll do a live stream where I talk about that. In fact, I've drawn up some diagrams for it. Not that I have any means of producing it, but there's some ideas that maybe would be good to get out there into the ether and see if anyone else is interested in something like that. Valentine, I love the P1 and hated the T4. I'm kind of curious if you can elaborate on that a little bit. But I can see that they sound very different. The P1, much more of a neutral, warmish sound, whereas the T4, much more of an upper mid-range, trebly sound. Xavier's asking, have I ever considered the Final Audio stuff? Recently got the A8000 and it's been a life changer for me. So yeah, the A8000, that looks like a very nice IEM. It's a little bit on the pricey range. If Final wants to send it to me, I will 100% do a review for that, but probably not going to be able to fork out that cash for myself. I have reviewed a couple of other Final Audio IEMs. I've got the E2000 and the E1000. The E2000 I actually still like quite a bit. It's a little bit bassy, a little bit warm, maybe a tad on the muted side on the upper end for my personal taste, but I really like the form factor of it, and it's just, it doesn't really do anything wrong. So that's a good choice. The E1000, I know that's actually got, I think, more audiophile cred than what I give it. For me, the E1000 is a little bit on the boring side, but I don't know, a lot of people like it. Azim says, share my Spotify playlist. So I actually don't use Spotify. I have put together a playlist. So on my YouTube channel, go to the playlist tab, and there is one playlist that's called Reference. That is a list of songs that I very commonly will use when I'm testing audio equipment. So that's roughly my playlist. I did create a version of it on Spotify. It doesn't have all the same songs because Spotify and YouTube don't all have the same songs, but I do have that on Spotify, and I will, after this video, find that link and paste it into the comments. I posted it at one point, I think, in my community channel or my community tab. So if you dig back far enough, you'll probably find it. But yeah, mostly I don't use Spotify, so that is the extent of my Spotify playlist. Avex asked, how do I feel about the Sony Zx 300? I haven't really used it, to be honest. I've used it for about 30 seconds. And so my initial impression was I actually quite like the build of it. I love the way that it fit in the hand, and I like the shape of it, even though it's larger than the A45, that it's kind of a bigger brother too, and not really great reason for it to be larger. It being larger actually feels kind of nice in the hand, so that much I like. And then as far as listening experience, I wasn't listening to my own music, so I definitely can't tell you anything about the differences between the ZX 300 and any of the other Sony DAPs that I have tried. I can say that like I don't expect much difference in audio quality when it comes to using a single-ended output like on the other Sony DAPs that I've got versus a balanced output like you get on the ZX 300 and the ZX 500. Balanced, in my experience, means that the player is likely to output more volume, which is a good thing in certain situations, but the audio quality benefits of balanced, from my understanding and in my experience, really just don't mean anything unless I'm setting up a stage, right? And interference with my cables that are 100 foot long stretching across a stage is a factor. That's not a factor for me. I've got a 4 foot cable between me and my DAP, and there's not a lot of electronic interference in between there. So for me, balanced cables, not really a priority. So the ZX 300, I think it looks like a nice little player, but I don't think I would go that direction for myself. I mean, I haven't gone that direction for myself, but even if like money wasn't a factor, I don't think I would go that direction for myself because I don't want to convert everything that I've got to a 4.4 millimeter connector. And if I've got that player, I'm definitely not using the 3.5 millimeter jack. Walter White's asking, do I listen to Porcupine Tree? And no, the answer is I have not listened to Porcupine Tree. Should I? Any song recommendations that I should check out from Porcupine Tree? Hi-Fi Trucker followed up finally with the answer to the question that we all want to know. What salsa does he use on his lengua tacos? He says no salsa, only pico de gallo and a squeeze of lime. That sounds really good. Okay. Hi-Fi Trucker, I'm actually kind of curious I'm gonna guess you're in California, but where in California, if maybe you're not in California, but where are you at? Where are the best places to get these tacos? I've got quite a few options here in San Francisco Bay Area, although I don't know, been in quarantine for the last month or so, so I haven't been quite near. I actually haven't been to a taqueria. Man, wow. Holy moly, I haven't been to a taqueria in about 2 months, which is much longer than it normally is for me. Normally I go to one, roughly every week. So that's a problem. I'll have to find one. I'll have to find a taqueria, try some tacos, get the lengua, a little pico de gallo, squeeze a lime. Radishes? I don't know about radishes. Radiant Locasan's asking which DAC amp do I use for PC, so you can probably see it here in the background. I've got a Schiit Modi 3 DAC and a Schiit Valley 2 amp. And the reason that I chose these ones are that they look good. Like honestly, like I don't know. This is maybe not the most popular opinion for someone who dabbles in audiophile kingdom, but in my experience, most DACs and amps basically sound the same as long as they're not crap. And so when I'm deciding between, what sorts of equipment I want that has DACs and amps as sort of its main components, such as this stuff, the sound quality isn't necessarily going to be my #1 priority. I mean, there's sort of like a base level of, yes, it's got to achieve this, it's got to sound good, it's got to sound clean, and these things do. But on top of that, I'm not really looking at measurements and looking for things that have like the lowest total harmonic distortion and stuff like that. Like those sorts of specs, in my experience, are a little bit meaningless, at least to me. The things that really do matter to me more are going to be, aesthetics, build quality, functionality, And you know, the shit Valley was actually the piece that I got first. And that was my first audio amplifier. And it's kind of my only. I've got another one at the office. I have a JDS Atom at the office that I haven't been to in a while. But yeah, the Valley 2 was the first one I got. And the reason that I picked the Valley 2 was I liked the tube. I thought it looked cool. I liked the light, the glow that it gives. And I like the fact that these shit tube amplifiers get warm. Does that seem silly? Probably is a little bit silly, but just to give you a sense for like my personal values when it comes to DAC amps is base level of performance. As long as I can't tell the difference between the sound quality between this and something with lower distortion levels or whatever you can measure, I'm gonna be happy with it. And then on top of that, make it look cool, make it feel cool, make it feel powerful, a little bit dangerous. And I feel like this thing glowing and getting hot makes it feel a little bit dangerous. Because of that, I like it. It seems ridiculous, but that's actually kind of true. Uzum asking, tin T3s, T4s, Wizard Kylan or Starfield, which one? Between those, I already talked a little bit about the T4 versus the Starfield earlier. I should have the DVR functionality on, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and go back. Between the T4 and the Starfield, personal preference is going to be slightly in favor of the T4. And then Kylan, I don't actually recommend the Wizard Kylan. That's kind of a mediocre sounding IEM in my experience. And the T3s I think are still pretty good sounding. They're definitely more treble focused than the rest of the ones that you outlined there, but I'm gonna go with the tin T4s as my preference for that group. So Walter White followed up with clarification on, or well, just elaboration on the Porcupine Tree recommendation, song title, Arriving Somewhere But Not Here. So I'm mentioning it here on the video as a reminder to myself. Go check out that song. Valentine was elaborating. So earlier, Valentine described liking the tin P1 better than the T4. I asked for a little bit more detail following up. I didn't like the Z1R, which is a different IM, due to the V shape. The T4 was too razor sharp bright, which I can get. And the P1, my fave soundstage, maybe boring, but no fatigue and sounds organic. I actually totally agree with that description. Again, I'm kind of a self-ascribed treble head, so for me, I like a little bit of treble heat. The T4, I think, is less treble than some of the other tin Hi-Fi T series, but still a tad on the bright side, so I can get that. And then following up, any flagship upgrade pathway for a P1 fan? I don't have a very good, if you're the same person that was asking for planar specifically, I have no answer for you. The P1 is the only planar IEM that I've heard, and the other planar IEMs that I've seen people do reviews about, there are the Odyssey ones that look pretty interesting, but from what I gather, they require either EQ or they require using Odyssey's cable, which basically has EQ built into it, and that's kind of a turnoff for me. So I haven't been that interested in trying those Odyssey IEMs, so might be waiting a while, or maybe just give up the planar bias. I would say that I think, well, I don't know that you're gonna like it, given that you said that you thought the T4 was a little bit too sharp. I personally think that the JVC FD-X1 is an upgrade in sound quality versus the tin P1, and actually fairly similar in tonality in terms of like, they're both fairly neutral and they've got like a nice little sub bass, although the JVCs have got a much punchier sub bass. Not like overwhelming, it's just punchy. But I do think that there's a risk that the JVCs are gonna be a little bit treble bright for you. I would say they're probably pretty similar in terms of treble energy to the tin T4s. So take that recommendation with that in mind. Mr. Space asking, do I have any expectations for the BL05? So that is the blonde BL05, follow up to the very popular blonde BL03, and my expectations are, at least, I hope that it sounds at least as good. I think that I've seen it in pictures. It looks much better than the BL03. Hopefully it sounds as good. That's it. As long as it looks better and like fits better, and sounds as good, I'll be pretty happy with it. I hope that it's still, you know, a budget. I hope that it's still, you know, under $50. I hope that it's still bassy, just because I need a good recommendation for folks that are asking for a bassy IM. I don't really have expectation that it's going to be my personal tonal preference, but that's okay, because not every IM needs to be that. Sarah says, you're kind of cool dork, bro. I am definitely a dork. I don't know about the cool part, but definitely a dork. To that end, look, I'm wearing a shirt with a frickin' Porta-Pro driver on it, and if you're interested in this shirt, I do have a link pinned to this chat. You can actually buy the shirt on Teespring. I've got it priced as low as I can reasonably have it priced, and have it priced the same in Europe and the US. Basically, I picked the lowest price that I could possibly make it, and make it the same price in those two different regions. It's like 20 bucks. And it's actually a pretty nice soft t-shirt if you're into nice soft t-shirts. And yes, I'm a dork. Avex asking, what do I think is a great entry DAC for someone getting into hi-fi audio? I guess it depends. Are you asking for like a PC DAC, or are you asking for a phone DAC? For a phone DAC, I think the Apple dongle is super easy recommendation, because it's like $9. I think it's less, it's literally less than $10 for the Apple dongle. And anyone who's into measurements, and I just got done saying I'm not that into measurements, but measurements mean that it at least is going to hit my minimum quality, my minimum standard of quality, and the Apple dongle does that. If you're on an Android phone, the Apple dongle is not going to get loud, so it's definitely better with sensitive IEMs. I think with the Maga OC-K5, Apple dongle is actually a really great match. But if you're on Android and you're not using really sensitive IEMs, I think the Meizu, this is the Meizu Pro dongle. I actually forget the name. What is the full name of it? The Meizu Hi-Fi Audio Pro. Terrible name. Pretty good little dongle. Hi-Fi Trucker, you're in Utah. All right. OMG status at a small Mexican place in Utah. What part of Utah? So when was the last time I was in Utah? I've been through Salt Lake. Maybe it was just once, but I feel like I've been through Salt Lake twice. So I like that section. We also spent some time camping in, was it like northeastern Flaming Gorge, I think was the area. But then the last place in Utah that I spent any time was actually in the southern end of Utah. Went through, let's see, what is it, like St. George or something like that? Bryce Canyon, I think that's in Utah, right? I went through there. That was like 2013. I went through my motorcycle. Great trip. Radiant Locasan following up with another question. How did I get started and get serious in hi-fi stuff? Like really starting to look for frequency response, harmonic distortion, description of sound, etc., etc., etc. How did I get started? I don't really know how to answer that question exactly. I mean, I can say that the headphone that really got me serious about audio was the Grado SR80, which I got like in 2011. And that was the only headphone that I had for a really, really long time. I don't know, I just kind of had this thought in my head, like most normal human beings, that I only need one headphone. So I had the SR80. I love the SR80. It brought, you know, open back sound to me, which is a thing I had never experienced before. And it's probably a part of why I still prefer treble focused, upper mid-range focused audio versus more bassy audio. That SR80, it really did change my mind a lot about what to expect from audio. Now, in terms of like, you know, looking at frequency graphs and stuff like that, that was just more of like a very gradual curiosity, and like seeing people reference these things in forums and on subreddits, and like talking about graphs and posting graphs and seeing squiggly lines and not really knowing how to interpret them. I get curious about that kind of stuff, and I like to dive in, although the way that I tend to dive into this sort of stuff is slowly over time. I like just like soak up and absorb knowledge slowly over time. And so I'm not much of a studier, but I am much of a dabbler. And so that sort of thing It's just sort of a gradual dabbling thing. Sanan's saying that audio and video are not in sync. Just giving me a heads up. Sorry if that's the case. I don't really know what to do about that. This is my first live stream, but maybe that's a good sign that I should be hanging it up. So without further ado, thank you guys for tuning in and watching this live stream, this unboxing of the Moondrop Blessing 2. I will be doing a full review of these. It'll probably take me a couple of weeks to get there, but I will be doing a full review. And I'll probably be doing more of these live unboxings. So if you enjoyed this, go ahead and hit the like button. Helps other people discover